Hey guys, tonight we are diving into one of my favorite kinds of stories, a pointlessly pointless history. It is the story of a man who dedicated his entire life to being a living, breathing inconvenience. We are going to meet a philosopher who was, by all accounts, a public nuisance, a professional troll, and possibly the most irregular thinker you have ever heard of. He took the idea of living simply to such an extreme that it circled all the way back around to being incredibly complicated. Honestly, if you tried to live like this guy today, you would probably be arrested, hospitalized, or both, likely within the first hour. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. It is a small click for you, but it makes a huge difference for the channel, and I always love to see our little community. So please drop your city and what time it is for you in the comments. It is a joy to see where you are all tuning in from. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The year is somewhere around 350 BC. You are in Athens, the buzzing, chaotic, brilliant heart of the Greek world. You are standing in the agora, the central marketplace, and it is a full-blown assault on the senses. The air is thick with the smell of roasting meat, dusty earth, cheap wine, and expensive perfume. The noise is a constant. Lively hum, merchants hawking their wares, politicians loudly debating the latest naval budget, poets reciting their verses, and everywhere, the endless chatter of philosophers arguing about the nature of virtue and the meaning of life. This is the intellectual capital of the world, a city that prides itself on logic, reason, and civilized discourse. People here value their reputation, their property, and their social standing above all else. They live in well-appointed houses, wear clean, respectable robes, and follow a complex set of social conventions. This is the world of Plato and his famous academy, a place of high-minded ideals and sophisticated thought. And then you see him, in the middle of this bustling, self-important marketplace. A small crowd has gathered. They are not listening to a politician or watching a juggler. They are staring, with a mixture of amusement, disgust, and bewilderment, at a man living in a piece of pottery. It is a pithos, a massive ceramic jar, the kind used for storing grain or olive oil. Lying on its side, and sticking out of the opening are the head and shoulders of a scruffy, weather-beaten man who looks to be in his middle age. His hair is a tangled mess, his beard is unkempt, and his face is a roadmap of sun and cynicism. This is Diogenes of Sinope, and this jar is his home. His only visible possessions are the ragged, filthy cloak he is wearing, a simple wooden staff leaning against the jar, and a small leather pouch. He seems utterly unbothered by the spectacle he is creating. In fact, he seems to relish it. He banters with the onlookers, trading insults with a quick, biting wit. A child points and laughs. Diogenes barks at him like a dog. A wealthy citizen tells him to move his unsightly home out of the public way. Diogenes suggests a place the citizen can put his opinion. This is not a hermit who has withdrawn from the world. This is a man who has chosen the most public space in the city to stage a one-man protest against the city itself. He is the most famous philosopher of the Cynic school, a school of thought that believed true happiness could only be found by rejecting all conventional desires, wealth, power, fame, reputation, possessions, even basic hygiene. He taught that these were all worthless illusions, traps that prevented people from living a virtuous life in accordance with nature. To prove his point, he decided to live, quite literally, like a dog. The word cynic itself comes from the Greek gemikos, meaning dog-like, and like a stray dog. He claimed no property, acknowledged no master, and answered the calls of nature whenever and wherever he pleased, often to the horror of the very civilized Athenians around him. Historians still debate just how literally we should take this. Was the jar his full-time, year-round residence, a shelter from the rain and the winter cold, or was it more of a symbolic headquarters, a piece of performance art he occupied in the marketplace to make his point as loudly as possible. The surviving accounts are a patchwork of anecdotes, and separating the literal truth from the philosophical legend is a nearly impossible task. What is certain is that he is here, in this jar, making everyone around him profoundly uncomfortable. He is a living, breathing paradox, a man of profound philosophical insight who has chosen to live like an animal, an outcast who has made the center of the city his stage. And as you watch him, you cannot help but wonder, how does a man end up here? What could possibly happen in your life to make you decide that the best way to live it is as a stray dog in a giant clay pot? The story, it turns out, starts with a crime. To understand how a man ends up in a jar, you have to travel back in time with him, away from the glittering metropolis of Athens, to a place on the very edge of the Greek world. Let's go to Sinope, his hometown. It is a bustling port city on the southern coast of the Black Sea, in what is now modern-day Turkey, in the 4th century BC. It is a semi-independent Greek colony, a frontier town that smells of salt, fish, and money. Here, a young Diogenes is growing up, not as a philosopher, but as the son of a man named Hychesias. Hychesias holds a respectable and very responsible job. He is a banker, or more accurately, a minter. He is in charge of the city's official mint, the man responsible for producing Sinope's currency. This is a position of immense public trust. The integrity of the city's economy rests on the quality and honesty of his work. Diogenes is his apprentice. You can imagine him as a young man, not yet the scruffy, cynical figure of the Athenian marketplace, but a boy learning a trade. He spends his days in the hot, noisy workshop of the mint. He learns the feel of metal, the art of striking coins, how to heat the bronze and silver, and how to stamp them with the city's official symbols. Perhaps the head of a nymph or an eagle clutching a dolphin. A common motif for Sinope. Life is comfortable. He has a home, a future, a respected place in society. But something is not right. Either Diogenes is a born troublemaker, or he and his father are living in a time of political and economic turmoil. The historical record is murky, but it seems that a plan is hatched. A terrible, risky, and deeply philosophical plan, according to one version of the story, told by the later biographer Diogenes Laertius. No relation. The young Diogenes travels to the oracle at Delphi, the most sacred shrine in the Greek world, to ask for guidance. He asks the oracle what he should do with his life. The priestess of Apollo gives him a typically cryptic and ambiguous answer: deface the currency. Diogenes takes this advice literally. He returns to Sinope and tells his father what the god has commanded. Together, they begin a secret, criminal enterprise from within the city's own mint. They start adulterating or falsifying the coinage. What does this mean exactly? Historians still debate the specifics of their crime. Were they debasing the currency by mixing the precious silver with cheaper metals like bronze or lead, thus devaluing every coin they produced? Were they counterfeiting by re-stamping old coins with new designs? Or were they engaged in a more subtle act of defacing, perhaps by chiseling or marking the coins in a way that questioned their legitimacy? One theory suggests they were part of a pro-Persian political faction trying to undermine the authority of the city's pro-Greek rulers. Whatever the specifics, the core of the act was a direct assault on convention. Money, in the ancient world, was more than just a medium of exchange. It was a symbol of political power, social order, and trust. A coin's value was guaranteed by the authority of the city that stamped it. To deface the currency was to attack the very foundation of that social agreement. It was an act of philosophical vandalism. You can almost hear the young Diogenes thinking, "You say this little piece of metal has value. This convention is what you base your lives on. Let's see what happens when we mess with it." Of course, they get caught. Their crime is discovered, and the scandal is enormous. The man entrusted with protecting the city's currency is found to be its greatest enemy. The punishment is swift and severe. Hychesias is imprisoned or executed. Diogenes, his son and accomplice, is stripped of his citizenship and exile, cast out from his home. his family, and his entire world. He is now an Apollos, a man without a city, the worst fate that could befall a Greek. He has nothing, no money, no property, no reputation. He has only the ragged clothes on his back and the bitter memory of his disgrace. He is at rock bottom, and it is from this place of absolute loss, this ground zero of social existence, that his new life, his life as a philosopher, will begin. His first, failed attempt to challenge society's conventions has cost him everything. His second attempt, in Athens, will make him immortal. You are on the road. The journey from Sinope to Athens is long and hard, and for a man with no money and no friends, it is a brutal education in the realities of the world. You are no longer Diogenes, son of Hygeus, the respectable apprentice. You are a beggar, a ghost, and in exile. You sleep in ditches and under trees. You learn the sharp pang of hunger and the dull ache of exhaustion. You learn to ask for food, to endure the sting of rejection and the occasional, surprising kindness of strangers. You walk for weeks, a slow, dusty pilgrimage towards the heart of the Greek world. The road is a ribbon of dirt and rock, populated by merchants with their laden mules, soldiers marching in formation, and other outcasts like yourself, drifting from one place to the next. You are invisible to most of them, a piece of human debris on the roadside. But this journey is not just a physical one. It is a crucible for your soul. With every step, the old Diogenes is being burned away. The shame of your exile, the anger at your disgrace, it is all being baked out of you by the relentless sun. You have been stripped of every chain that ties a man to society. Your citizenship, your property, your family name, your reputation, and in that, you find a strange, terrifying freedom. You have nothing left to lose. What can anyone threaten you with? Disgrace, you are already disgraced. Poverty, you are already poor. You are a man unburdened by the anxieties that plague every other citizen you see. Finally, after what feels like an eternity, you see it on the horizon. Athens, the city rises from the plains of Attica, crowned by the majestic Parthenon on the Acropolis, its marble gleaming in the sun. It is a sight that has inspired poets and god kings. For you, it is simply your next destination, a place full of people who are not yet tired of you. You enter the city not through the grand ceremonial gates, but through the bustling, chaotic port of Piraeus. The city overwhelms you. It is a labyrinth of narrow, winding streets, of fine stone houses and crowded tenement blocks. The air is alive with the sound of 1,000 conversations, the scent of 1,000 cooking fires. You see Athenians everywhere, dressed in their fine linen robes, their faces full of purpose and self-importance. They rush to the law courts, to the assembly, to the market, their lives governed by a complex web of rules, ambitions, and conventions you now see as utterly absurd. In a public square, you might see a wooden notice board, a Cynic, where official decrees are posted for all to see. This is a quirky feature of Athenian public life. Legal judgments, new laws, and lists of state debtors are all displayed here. You might even see a list of public exiles, their names written out for all to see. You wonder if your own name is on a similar board somewhere, a permanent record of your crime. It is in this city, the epicenter of philosophy, that you decide on your new life's work. Your first attempt at defacing the currency back in Sinope was literal. You tampered with the metal coins. Now, you realize the oracle's message had a deeper meaning. The real currency that needs to be defaced is not the silver and bronze, but the moral and intellectual currency of society, the unthinking conventions, the hollow traditions, the pompous pronouncements of so-called wise men. You will be a critic, a gadfly, a living refutation of everything this city holds dear. You will show these proud Athenians that their wealth is a prison, their reputation is a fantasy, and their complicated lives are a source of endless misery. The academic debate about this period of Diogenes' life is a fascinating one. Was his embrace of extreme poverty a genuine philosophical breakthrough born from his suffering, or was it a form of sour grapes, The angry reaction of a disgraced man who decided to reject a world that had already rejected him. It is a classic chicken and egg problem of motivation, and the truth is likely a messy combination of both. But you, Diogenes, are not concerned with these future debates. You have a mission, but to take on the philosophical giants of this city, a city that boasts Plato himself as its star attraction. You need a philosophical education. You are a angry, and brilliant outcast. Now you need to find a teacher who can help you sharpen your ideas into a weapon. And you have heard of just the man. A grumpy, reclusive old philosopher named Antisthenes. You have a new mission, to become a philosopher. But in a city overflowing with them, where do you even start? You could go to Plato's famous academy, a well-funded, prestigious institution just outside the city walls. There, you could listen to polished lectures on metaphysics and political theory in a beautiful, shaded olive grove. You could engage in polite, reasoned debate with the sons of Athens' wealthiest families. But that is not you. You are not polite. You are not wealthy. And you are certainly not interested in abstract theories about some perfect, unseen world. You need something grittier, something more grounded in the harsh realities of the life you now lead. You need a teacher who understands suffering, who scorns comfort, and who sees the hypocrisy of Athenian society as clearly as you do. And so, you seek out a man named Antisthenes. Antisthenes is the grumpy old man of Athenian philosophy. He is a former student of the great Socrates, but he took a very different path from his more famous classmate, Plato. While Plato built a grand, systematic philosophy, Antisthenes championed a life of rugged individualism and radical simplicity. He teaches that virtue is the only good, vice is the only evil, and everything else, wealth, health, pleasure, fame, reputation, is completely indifferent. The key to happiness, he argues, is autarkia, or self-sufficiency, wanting nothing, needing nothing, and therefore being immune to the whims of fortune. He does not teach in a fancy academy. He holds his discussions in a public gymnasium called the Cynic, a place designated for Athenians of illegitimate birth. It is a detail that appeals to you, an exile and an outcast. This is a philosophy for outsiders. Finding him is easy enough. You approach the old man, who is as scruffy and simply dressed as you are. You get straight to the point. Make me your student. Antisthenes looks you up and down, his eyes filled with a weary disdain. He is not looking for disciples. In fact, he has a reputation for actively discouraging anyone who tries to follow him. His response is blunt. Go away. I do not take students. You, however, are not easily deterred. You are a man who has lost everything. A harsh word is nothing to you, so you do not leave. You just stay. You start following him. When he walks to the market, you walk a few paces behind. When he sits down to talk with a friend, you sit nearby, listening. When he sleeps in a public portico, you find a spot on the ground a few feet away. You do not argue. You do not plead. You just make yourself an unavoidable, silent, ragged presence in his life. This, understandably, drives the old man crazy. He tries ignoring you, but your persistence is like a force of nature. He shouts at you. He insults you, but your shamelessness is a perfect shield. Nothing he says can wound you more than your exile already has. This goes on for days, maybe even weeks. The situation becomes a small spectacle for the Athenians. They watch this strange, silent battle of wills between the grumpy old philosopher and the stubborn, ragged exile. Finally, one day, Antisthenes snaps. His patience is completely gone. He turns on you, his face a mask of fury. He raises the heavy wooden staff he carries for support and for fending off stray dogs. I said, Goaway. He roars, brandishing the staff as if to strike you. The onlookers gasp. This is it, the ultimate rejection. A teacher threatening a potential student with physical violence. But you do not flinch. You do not back away. Instead, you lean forward, offering your head to the blow. In a clear, steady voice that cuts through the market chatter. You say, "Strike, for you will find no wood hard enough to drive me away from you. So long as I think you have something to say." Silence. Antisthenes freezes, his staff held in midair. He stares at you. He sees not just a beggar or an annoyance. He sees an unbreakable will. He sees a man who has endured so much that a simple beating is meaningless. He sees a spirit as tough and stubborn as his own. The old man slowly lowers his staff. A long sigh escapes his lips, a sound of profound defeat and, perhaps, a flicker of admiration. "All right," he grumbles. "You can stay." And with that, your apprenticeship begins. The exact nature of this mentorship is a topic of great debate for historians. Was Antisthenes the official founder of the Cynic school, with Diogenes as his star pupil? Or was his influence more informal, with later writers creating a neat lineage from Socrates to Antisthenes to Diogenes to legitimize the movement? The story of the staff might be a legend, a perfect anecdote created to capture the essence of their relationship. But what is certain is that in this grumpy, uncompromising old man, you have found the intellectual spark you were looking for. He has given you the philosophical tools, the focus on virtue, the rejection of convention, the ideal of self-sufficiency. But you are about to take those ideas and push them to an extreme, theatrical, and outrageous conclusion that will make your old master's grumpiness look like cheerful optimism. Your apprenticeship with Antisthenes is less about formal lessons and more about observation and absorption. You listen to his diatribes against the foolishness of society. You watch his simple, unadorned way of life, and you absorb his court teachings about virtue and self-sufficiency. The ideas resonate with your own experience of exile and poverty. You have learned firsthand that a man can survive, even thrive, with almost nothing. But you feel that Antisthenes, for all his grumpiness, does not take it far enough. He talks the talk, but you want to live the talk in its most extreme, undiluted form. You are searching for a perfect model, a living, breathing example of a creature that embodies the Cynic virtues of simplicity, shamelessness, and living in accordance with nature. And then, one day, you find it. You are walking through the streets of Athens, a city teeming with animals as well as people. You see the well-fed horses of the cavalry, the mules and donkeys hauling goods to the market, the cats slinking through the alleys. But your attention is drawn to the dogs. They are everywhere. Not the pampered lapdogs of wealthy women, but the strayed dogs of the street. They are a familiar part of the urban landscape, a pack of scruffy, independent, and resilient survivors. You stop and watch them, and as you do, you have a profound, life-altering revelation, a philosophical epiphany. You realize that these dogs are the perfect cynics. They are the true philosophers. Look at how a dog lives. It has no need for money. It does not worry about its reputation. It does not own a house or fancy furniture. It finds its food where it can, drinks from puddles, and sleeps wherever it finds a sheltered spot. Its needs are simple and natural. Food, water, shelter, and it is utterly, magnificently shameless. A dog does not care about social conventions. It will eat, sleep, and answer the call of nature in public, without a second thought for who might be watching. It is loyal to those who are kind to it and barks ferociously at those it perceives as a threat. It lives entirely in the present moment, untroubled by regrets about the past or anxieties about the future. It is, you realize, the happiest, freest creature in all of Athens. This is the moment the name of your philosophy clicks into place. The word cynic is derived from the Greek kynikos, which means dog-like, while your teacher Antisthenes might have been given this name as an insult because of the rough gymnasium where he taught. You decide to embrace it as a badge of honor. You will not just be a cynic. You will be the dog. You decide to model your entire life on the behavior of these urban strays. You will live as they do, stripping your existence down to the bare, natural essentials. This is a radical, shocking decision. Greek culture, and especially Athenian culture, was built on the idea that humanity's greatness lay in its separation from the animal world. Civilization. reason, and shame. These were the things that made a man a man. To choose, deliberately, to live like an animal was a profound rejection of everything it meant to be Greek. From this day forward, you adopt your uniform, a single, coarse woolen cloak, which you wear year-round. It is your clothing, your blanket, and your shelter. You carry a wooden staff, not just for support, in the style of a traveling philosopher, but also to fend off other, less philosophical dogs who might challenge you for territory or a scrap of food. And you carry a simple leather pouch, or wallet, for the meager rations of lentils or barley you might beg or be given. The historical accuracy of this canine revelation moment is, of course, impossible to verify. It is likely a story that grew over time to explain the origins of the Cynic name and Diogenes' bizarre behavior, but it perfectly captures the essence of his philosophical project. There is a quirky detail that modern archaeology has shed some light on. Excavations of ancient Greek homes often find the remains of dogs buried within the property, suggesting they were beloved pets. But the strays of the street were seen very differently. They were scavengers, a nuisance, sometimes even a threat. By choosing the stray dog as your role model, you are not choosing a cute, cuddly pet. You are choosing to be a pariah, a scavenger on the fringes of society, a creature that lives off the scraps and garbage of a civilization you have utterly rejected. You are ready to start your new life, not just as a man without a city, but as a man who has chosen to become a dog. You have your philosophy, you have your uniform, and you have your canine role model. Now you need a place to live, or rather, a place to demonstrate your rejection of the very concept of living in the conventional sense. You need a kennel. You wander through the bustling agora of Athens, past the grand public buildings, the SDO as with their cool, shaded colonnades, and the stalls of the merchants selling everything from figs to fishhooks. You see the Athenians scurrying back and forth from their comfortable homes, their minds filled with anxieties about mortgages, leaky roofs, and noisy neighbors. The very idea of property, you believe, is a trap, a source of endless worry and competition. You need to make a statement against it. You could sleep in the open, under the porticos of the public buildings, and you often do. But you need something more permanent, something more theatrical. You need a home that is so absurdly minimalist that it serves as a daily, public mockery of the Athenian obsession with real estate. And then you find it, leaning against the wall of a public building. Perhaps the Mitroon, the temple of the mother of the gods, is your perfect home. It is a pithos, a massive, earthenware storage jar, probably about as tall as you are, lying on its side. These jars were the 55-gallon drums of the ancient world, used to store huge quantities of grain, olive oil, or wine. This one is clearly discarded. Perhaps it was cracked, or no longer needed. It is, by all definitions, a piece of trash, and you see it as a palace. You approach the jar. It is big enough for you to crawl inside, to curl up and be sheltered from the worst of the sun and the rain. It requires no upkeep. It has no doors to lock, no rent to pay. It is the most minimalist, most self-sufficient, most dog-like dwelling imaginable. It is perfect. So you move in. You simply claim the discarded jar as your own and set up your new life. You arrange your single ragged cloak as a sort of mattress on the hard ceramic floor. You lean your staff against the side and place your leather pouch just inside the opening. This is your entire household, set up in the most public, most central location in all of Athens. Your new choice of residence becomes an instant sensation. People are flabbergasted. This is not just a poor, homeless man seeking shelter. This is a philosopher, a man known for his sharp wit, deliberately choosing to live in a piece of garbage in the middle of the city. The story of the philosopher in the tub, as it was often mistranslated in Roman times, from pithos to tub, begins here. Life in the jar is a piece of performance art. When the sun is hot, you can be seen lounging in your shady ceramic tube, commenting on the foolishness of the sweaty, overdressed Athenians rushing by. When it rains, you are snug and dry, while others are scrambling for cover. You demonstrate, day in and day out, that a man's needs for shelter are incredibly simple. A famous anecdote illustrates your attitude. One day, you are inside your jar, enjoying the sun on your face, when you see a mouse scurrying about. It is not building a nest. It is not hoarding food for the winter. It is simply living, moment to moment. You watch it for a while and then laugh at yourself. Diogenes, you say out loud, this mouse is a better philosopher than you are. It needs even less to be happy. It has no need for even a POS. You realize that even your extreme minimalism has its own attachments. The historical debate over the jar is a lively one. Did he really live in it full time? Some scholars suggest it was more of a stunt, a prop for his philosophical theater that he used during the day. Others argue that, given his commitment to his principles, it is entirely plausible that he made it his permanent home. There is some archaeological evidence for this. The remains of a very large POS were found in the Athenian agora near the Metro One, leading to the charming, though unprobable, speculation that it could be the very one. Regardless of the specifics, the jar becomes your trademark. It is the ultimate symbol of your philosophy. You have rejected the house, the oikos, which was the fundamental building block of Greek society. You have chosen to live in a piece of pottery, a man-made object, yet one so simple it is almost a natural cave. You are not homeless. You have a home, and by choosing the most ridiculous home imaginable, you are holding up a mirror to the Athenians, forcing them to question the value and the purpose of their own, much more complicated houses. Your life in the jar is a stationary protest, a fixed point of absurdity in the bustling agora. But you are not a man to sit still for long. You are a philosopher on a mission, and that mission requires you to be mobile. You need to take your unique brand of irritating enlightenment out to the people, and so begins one of your most famous and enduring pieces of philosophical street theater. One bright, sunny morning, when the marketplace is at its most crowded, you emerge from your ceramic home, but you are not empty-handed. In one hand, you are holding a lit oil lamp. You proceed to wander through the crowds, holding the flickering lamp aloft. You peer into the faces of the people you pass, your own face a mask of intense, serious concentration. You hold the lamp up to a powerful politician as he is delivering a speech. You shove it in the face of a wealthy merchant haggling over the price of figs. You interrupt a group of young men earnestly debating philosophy, illuminating their confused faces with your little flame. Naturally, this behavior attracts a great deal of attention. People stop and stare. They laugh. They think you have finally gone completely mad. In exile, living in a jar, now wandering around in the middle of the day with a lit lamp. Someone finally stops you. Diogenes, what are you doing? It is the middle of the day. Why are you carrying the lamp? You stop and fix the questioner with your intense gaze. You hold the lamp up high, as if to get a better look at him. And then you deliver the punchline. I am looking for a man. Sometimes you would say, I am looking for an honest man. This single, absurd act is a powerful and multi-layered piece of social commentary. On the surface, it is a brilliant insult. By searching for a man in a crowd full of people, you are implying that none of them meet the criteria. You are suggesting that these self-important Athenians, these politicians, merchants, and soldiers, are not true human beings. They are mere shadows, puppets of convention, their humanity buried under layers of greed, ambition, and hypocrisy. The city is full of people, but empty of true men. But there is a deeper, more philosophical point. You are playing with the Greek concept of reason and enlightenment, often symbolized by light. Plato, your great rival, used the metaphor of the sun to represent the ultimate truth, the form of the good. You are taking this high-minded symbolism and dragging it, quite literally, down into the muck and chaos of the marketplace. You are suggesting that this enlightenment that the philosophers talk about is useless if it cannot be found in the real world, among real people. Your performance is a living paradox. You are using a physical light to search for a metaphorical one, and the absurdity of the act highlights the absence of the thing you are looking for. You are using a tool for seeing in the dark to point out that everyone around you is blind in the daylight. The anecdotes about this practice are numerous. Sometimes, when people would mock you, pointing out that there are plenty of men around, you would respond by pointing to a pack of stray dogs and saying, "Perhaps there." This reinforced your core belief that animals, in their simple, honest existence, were more genuinely human than the corrupted citizens of Athens. The historicity of this specific act is, like most stories about you, debated. It is such a perfect, theatrical gesture that it might be a legend created by your followers to summarize your teaching. But it is a story that has resonated through the ages. It has become a classic trope, the image of the wise fool, the cynic searching for honesty in a corrupt world. There is a subtle, almost sad undertone to the performance. Your search is, of course, doomed to failure. You know you will never find your honest man because your standards are impossibly high. Your ideal human is a person completely free from the vices of society, a perfect sage, by endlessly searching and never finding. You are making a tragic point about the human condition. You are not just a troll with a lamp. You are a lonely prophet, holding a tiny flame against a vast, overwhelming darkness, forever searching for a kindred spirit in a world that cannot understand you. Your philosophical theater is not just about grand, symbolic gestures like carrying a lamp. It is also about the small, mundane acts of daily life. You believe that philosophy should be practiced in every moment, not just debated in stuffy lecture halls. And there is no act more fundamental, more natural, or more capable of horrifying polite society than eating. It is midday. The sun is at its peak, and the agora is a hive of activity. The smells of food are everywhere. Baking bread, grilling fish, ripe olives. Respectable Athenians are heading home for their midday meal, to be eaten in the privacy of their dining rooms, reclining on couches, served by their slaves. This is the civilized way to eat. You, however, have a different idea. You find the most crowded, most conspicuous spot you can, perhaps on the steps of a major public building like the Stove at Talos. You sit down, cross-legged on the dusty stone. Then, you open your simple leather pouch and take out your lunch. It is a meal of Spartan simplicity. A handful of lentils, maybe a coarse barley cake, and an onion. And then, right there, in the middle of everyone, you begin to eat. This act, which seems so normal to a modern mind, is deeply shocking to the Athenians. Eating in public was simply not done. It was considered a sign of a complete lack of self-control, of animalistic behavior. It was something that only the lowest of the low, the most desperate beggars, would do. For a philosopher, a man of supposed intellect, to do it was a deliberate and calculated insult to public decency. A crowd gathers. People point and whisper. They are disgusted, but they are also fascinated. You are violating a fundamental taboo, and they cannot look away. Someone, a wealthy man in a clean, perfectly draped robe, approaches you, his face a mask of revulsion. Diogenes. He scolds, "Why must you eat in the marketplace like a dog?" You look up from your lentils, your expression one of perfect innocence. You pop an onion slice into your mouth, chew thoughtfully, and then reply, "Because I am hungry in the marketplace." Your response is a masterpiece of cynical logic. It is simple, unanswerable, and it exposes the absurdity of the convention you are breaking. You are treating the social rule as if it is completely nonsensical. Why should a man not eat when he is hungry, wherever he happens to be? The location is irrelevant to the natural need. You are forcing the onlookers to confront the fact that their social rules are often completely arbitrary and disconnected from natural human behavior. You continue your meal, unbothered by the stares. You eat with your hands, noisily and with gusto. You are performing the art of shamelessness. You are demonstrating that a man who is free from shame, who does not care about the opinions of others, is a man who is truly free. The anecdotes surrounding your public dining habits are numerous. Sometimes, you would be criticized for eating in a temple, a sacred space. You would reply, "Well, if it is okay to pray in here, why is it not okay to eat?" Both are natural. You constantly challenge the artificial lines that society draws between the sacred and the profane, the public and the private. This practice is part of your training regimen. Your asks is, just as an athlete trains their body, you are training your soul. You are deliberately putting yourself in situations that provoke shame and disgust, and by enduring them, you are building up a spiritual callus. You are making yourself immune to the judgment of the crowd. A fascinating historical detail is the Greek concept of the symposium, the formal drinking party. These were highly ritualized events that took place in the private homes of the elite. They were the absolute opposite of your marketplace picnic. They were all about order, rules, and demonstrating one's civilized nature. Your public, shameless, solitary meal is a direct and pointed mockery of this cherished aristocratic institution. You are holding an anti-symposium. So, you finish your lunch, wipe your hands on your ragged cloak, and perhaps take a nap right there on the steps. You have successfully refueled your body and, more importantly, you have delivered another powerful, silent lecture to the people of Athens. You have shown them that a handful of lentils eaten in freedom and honesty is a greater feast than a banquet eaten in the prison of social convention. Your main philosophical rival in Athens is, without a doubt, Plato. The two of you are like the north and south poles of Greek thought. Plato is the aristocrat, the idealist, the man of abstract theories and high-minded metaphysics. You are the exile, the materialist, the man of grubby, in-your-face reality. His school, the academy, is a place of serene, orderly discourse. Your school is a dirty jar in the middle of the marketplace. It is inevitable that you would dedicate a significant portion of your energy to publicly and theatrically annoying him. The scene of your most famous philosophical prank is Plato's academy itself. Plato, in his role as a teacher, is fond of delivering neat, elegant definitions for complex concepts. It is a key part of his method to find the universal, unchanging form that lies behind the messy particulars of the world. One day, the topic of discussion at the academy is the nature of humanity. What is a man? After a lengthy and sophisticated discussion, Plato offers up his definitive definition, one that he is apparently very pleased with. A man, he declares, is a featherless bite, a two-legged animal without feathers. The definition is, on the surface, quite clever. It neatly separates humans from birds, who have feathers, and from all the four-legged beasts. The students nod in appreciation. It is a tidy, logical, and elegant piece of philosophical classification. News of this brilliant new definition quickly spreads through the intellectual circles of Athens and, eventually, reaches your jaw in the agora. When you hear it, a slow, wicked grin spreads across your face. A featherless bite. It is the kind of abstract, out-of-touch nonsense that you live to demolish. You see an opportunity for a piece of philosophical theater so perfect, so devastatingly simple, that it will be remembered for thousands of years. You get to work. First, you need to acquire a chicken. This is easy enough in the bustling marketplace. You then take the chicken to a quiet spot and proceed to pluck it, feather by feather, until it is a sad, pink, shivering, and decidedly featherless creature. Then, with your masterpiece prepared, you head for the academy. You can imagine the scene. Plato is in the middle of a lecture, perhaps elaborating on his definition to his rapt students. The atmosphere is one of serene, intellectual concentration. Suddenly, there is a commotion at the entrance to the olive grove. All heads turn, and there you are, Diogenes the doll, looking as scruffy and out of place as ever. You stride into the middle of the philosophical gathering, holding the plucked chicken aloft like a trophy. You hold it up for everyone to see, its skinny, featherless legs dangling, and with a triumphant shout that shatters the academic calm, you declare, "Behold, I have brought you a man, absolute chaos." The students erupt in a mixture of horrified gasps and uncontrollable laughter. Plato's carefully constructed philosophical definition has been annihilated in an instant by a naked, squawking chicken. You have demonstrated, more powerfully than any counter-argument could, The utter absurdity of trying to define the complex reality of a human being with such a simplistic, purely physical description. The story goes that Plato, to his credit, was a good sport about it, though he was undoubtedly mortified. He recognized the brilliance of your critique. He reportedly turned to his students and, with a sigh, amended his definition. A man is a featherless pipe. He clarified, with broad, flat nails. This addition, with broad, flat nails, has become a classic footnote in the history of philosophy. It is a testament to the day that Plato, the great idealist, was forced by you, the great realist, to get specific. It is a victory for messy reality over neat theory. The historicity of this anecdote is, like all the great Diogenes stories, debated by scholars. It is almost too perfect, a perfectly crafted philosophical joke. Did it really happen exactly this way? Perhaps not. But the story survives because it so perfectly captures the fundamental difference between your two philosophies. Plato sought to understand the world by looking up to the abstract heavens of the forms. You sought to understand it by looking down at the dirty, feathered, and sometimes plucked and naked reality right in front of you. Your philosophical assault on Plato and his academy does not end with the plucked chicken. That was just a single, brilliant salvo. You are engaged in a long-term campaign of intellectual irritation, and you miss no opportunity to poke holes in his polished, aristocratic worldview. Your next target is not his words, but his interior design. Plato's academy was not just a school. It was a reflection of its founder's philosophy. It was a place of order, beauty, and refinement. He and his wealthy students valued a certain aesthetic, an environment conducive to high-minded thought. This included the furnishings of their lecture spaces. They would recline on elegant couches, and the floors would be covered with expensive, beautifully woven carpets or rugs. These were symbols of a civilized, comfortable, and sophisticated life. To you, these rugs are a perfect target. They represent everything you despise: luxury, vanity, and a soft, delicate existence that is completely detached from the harsh realities of nature. They are, in your eyes, a philosophical crime scene. One day, you hear that Plato is hosting a special lecture or a symposium. It is a gathering of the city's intellectual elite, all dressed in their finest robes, ready to engage in polite and profound conversation. You decide to attend. You arrive at the academy looking, as usual, like you have just been dragged out of a ditch. Your single cloak is filthy, your hair is matted, and your feet are caked with the mud and grime of the Athenian streets. You have made no effort to clean yourself for the occasion. In fact, you have probably made an effort to get extra dirty. You walk into the lecture hall. The air is filled with the scent of perfume and clean linen. The guests are arranged elegantly around the room, their clean, sandal-led feet resting on the beautiful, expensive Persian rugs that cover the floor. You do not say a word. You simply begin to walk across the room, taking a path that leads you directly over the most luxurious of the carpets. And as you walk, you deliberately grind your filthy, muddy feet into the pristine fabric. With each step, you leave a trail of dirt and grime, a deliberate act of desecration. The guests are horrified. The polite conversation stutters to a halt. All eyes are on you as you calmly and methodically ruin a piece of expensive art with your feet. Plato, ever the master of ceremonies, sees what you are doing. He knows this is not a thoughtless act. It is a philosophical statement. Annoyed, but determined to get the upper hand, he calls out to you. "Diogenes," he says, with a tone of wary superiority, "I see you are trampling on my pride." He is trying to frame your act as a personal attack, a petty display of envy from a poor man towards a rich one. He is trying to belittle your critique by making it about his personal pride. But you are ready with a comeback. You stop, turn to face him, and deliver a line that turns his own words against him. "Yes, Plato," you reply, "but with a pride of my own." Your retort is brilliant. You are admitting to the act of trampling, but you are also accusing Plato of the very same sin. Your pride, you are suggesting is the pride of living a virtuous, simple life, free from the vanity of possessions. His pride is the pride of a man attached to worthless, material things like expensive carpets. You are trampling on his empty, materialistic pride with your own, more authentic, philosophical pride. You have turned a rude act into a moral lesson. This story, like the one with the chicken, perfectly encapsulates the clash between your two worldviews. Plato believed that the material world was a messy, imperfect reflection of a higher reality, but he saw no contradiction in enjoying the finer things this world had to offer. In fact, for him, beauty in the material world could be a stepping stone towards understanding the ultimate form of beauty. You saw it completely differently. For you, attachment to any material luxury, beautiful or not, was a trap. It was a distraction from the only thing that mattered, the state of one's soul. By dirtying his rug, you are not just being a slob. You are performing a spiritual cleansing. You are trying to wipe the muck of materialism off of Plato's own philosophy, using the literal muck on your feet. Your critiques of your fellow philosophers are not always so theatrical. Sometimes, your most effective method is a simple, devastatingly direct action that cuts through a fog of unnecessary complexity. You have a particular talent for spotting when a philosopher is getting lost in their own cleverness, creating problems with words that do not actually exist in reality. The target, this time, is not Plato himself, but one of the other philosophical schools that was popular in Athens. It is a group of thinkers known as the Eleatics, a school founded by the philosopher Parmenides. They were known for their mind-bending paradoxes and their radical arguments about the nature of reality. One of their most famous and infuriating arguments, popularized by Parmenides' student Annoy, was the argument against the possibility of motion. Using a series of clever logical paradoxes, Annoy proved that motion is an illusion. His most famous paradox involves Achilles and the tortoise, arguing that the swift-footed hero can never catch the slow-moving reptile because he must always first cover half the distance, and then half of the remaining distance, and so on, in an infinite series of steps. It is a brilliant piece of logic chopping, designed to show that our sensory experience of the world is unreliable and that true reality, which is singular and unchanging, can only be understood through pure reason. One day, you find yourself at a gathering where a philosopher from this school is holding forth. He is a student of Zeno, and he is laying out the classic argument. Motion is impossible, he declares to the assembled crowd. He explains the paradoxes, he weaves his web of logic, and he concludes, with an air of profound intellectual triumph, that the very act of moving from one place to another is a logical contradiction and therefore cannot truly happen. His audience is a mix of impressed and bewildered. They cannot find a flaw in his logic, but his conclusion obviously contradicts their everyday experience. They are stuck, trapped in a philosophical knot. You are sitting nearby, listening to this whole performance with growing impatience. You see it for what it is, a pointless game of words, a clever trick that has no bearing on the real world. You could, of course, stand up and offer a complex logical refutation of your own. You could point out the flawed premises in his argument, but that would be to play his game, to engage in the very kind of abstract, verbal shadow boxing that you despise. You choose a different path, a much more direct one. While the Eleatic philosopher is still basking in the glow of his own proof, you simply get up, you stand, and then you begin to walk. You just walk back and forth in front of him. You do not say a word. You just keep walking. The crowd turns to look at you. The philosopher, annoyed at the interruption, stops talking and stares at you. What are you doing? He might ask. You just keep walking. The silence stretches on. The absurdity of the situation dawns on everyone. Here is a man proving with logic that motion is impossible. And here is another man, Diogenes, effortlessly and obviously moving. Your simple, silent action is a more powerful and complete refutation of his entire philosophy than a 1,000-word essay could ever be. This anecdote is a classic example of your philosophical method, which some scholars have called performative refutation. You do not just argue against an idea. You perform its absurdity. You demonstrate its uselessness by contrasting it with simple, undeniable, physical reality. The Eleatic's error, in your view, was to trust abstract language more than the evidence of their own senses. You are reminding them that reality does not care about their paradoxes. This story is often paired with a similar one. Another philosopher was lecturing on the non-existence of a certain abstract concept. You responded by pointing to a table and saying, "I see a table." The philosopher replied, "Ah, but do you see the table, miss? The abstract form of the table." You shot back, "No, but I see the table." It is the same core message. A preference for the concrete and the real over the abstract and the theoretical. This common sense, no-nonsense approach is a huge part of your appeal. While other philosophers are tying themselves in logical knots, you are busy cutting them with the simple sort of reality. Your silent stroll is a perfect, pointlessly brilliant piece of philosophical commentary. It is, as the Romans would later say, solvitur ambulando. It is solved by walking. Your decision to live like a dog is not just a passing phase or a funny gimmick. It is the central, organizing principle of your entire philosophical project. To understand you, Diogenes, one has to ask a very simple question. What is so great about dogs? Why did you hold them up as the ultimate role models for humanity? Your admiration for dogs is based on a very clear-eyed observation of their behavior, which you saw as a living instruction manual for the virtuous life. First and foremost, dogs are masters of living according to nature. Their needs are simple and honest. When a dog is hungry, it seeks food. When it is thirsty, it seeks water. When it is tired, it sleeps. It does not complicate its life with artificial desires. A dog has no ambition to become the alpha dog of the entire Greek world. It does not lie awake at night worrying about its stock portfolio, or whether its toga is the latest fashion. You saw this as a profound lesson. Humans, you believed, were born with simple, natural needs, but society had corrupted them, layering on thousands of false, artificial desires, for wealth, for fame, for power, that were the source of all their misery. To be happy, a man had to unlearn these desires and return to the simple, natural state of the dog. Second, dogs are shameless. This was a crucial virtue for you. A dog does not blush. It will perform any bodily function in public without a second thought because, for a dog, there is no distinction between a public and a private act. It is simply a natural act. You saw human shame as a kind of sickness, a social convention that forced people to lie and hide their true, natural selves, by deliberately behaving shamelessly in public, eating, sleeping, and even relieving yourself in the agora. You were not just trying to be shocking. You were trying to heal yourself, and others, from the disease of shame. Third, dogs are loyal and discerning. A stray dog does not offer its affection to just anyone. It can distinguish between a friend and an enemy. It is grateful to those who show it kindness, offering a scrap of food or a kind word, and it is hostile to those who threaten it. You admired this honest, straightforward approach to social relationships. You saw the Athenians engaged in a constant game of flattery, deception, and false friendship, all for social or political gain. You, like a dog, chose to be brutally honest. You were a faithful friend to the few you respected and a biting enemy to the many you despised. Your famous wit was, in essence, your philosophical bark. Fourth, dogs are tough. They are resilient. They can endure hardship, cold, hunger, rejection, without complaint. They live a life of constant asks, is, or training, simply by surviving on the streets. This physical and mental toughness was a core ideal of your philosophy. You believe that a man should constantly train himself to endure hardship, to make himself indifferent to comfort and pain. Your life in the jar, with your single cloak and meager diet, was a self-imposed training regimen designed to make you as tough and resilient as the strays you so admired. The historical context of the dog in ancient Greece is important here. While some dogs were kept as pets, the word teiwaion, Dog was also a common and potent insult. To call someone a dog was to accuse them of being shameless, thieving, and base. It was a word loaded with contempt. Your genius was to take this common insult and turn it into a badge of honor. When people called you Diogenes the dog, you did not deny it. You embraced it. Yes, you would reply, I am a dog, for I fawn on those who give me anything. I yelp at those who refuse, and I set my teeth in rascals. The debate among scholars about this dog-like life focuses on how far you took it. Did you really do everything a dog does in public? The ancient sources, which are often sensationalized, say yes. They are full of shocking anecdotes about your public indecency. Modern scholars are sometimes more skeptical, suggesting that these stories might be exaggerations designed to make a philosophical point. But whether you took it to the absolute literal extreme or not, the core message is the same. You looked at the anxious, complicated, and unhappy lives of the Athenians, and then you looked at the simple, honest, and present-focused lives of the dogs on the street, and you concluded, without a trace of irony, that the dogs were winning at life. Your life as the dog is a masterclass in the art of shamelessness. In Greek, this concept is an idea, and for you, it is not a vice. It is a supreme virtue. It is a tool, a weapon, and a form of therapy. You practice public shamelessness as a deliberate strategy to shock the Athenians out of their comfortable, unthinking acceptance of social norms. Every day in the agora is a new performance. You see every social convention not as a rule to be followed, but as a boundary to be transgressed. You are a walking, talking experiment in the art of what if we just did not. Take the simple act of public speaking. In Athens, rhetoric and oratory were high arts. A speaker would stand on a designated platform, the bema, and deliver a carefully structured, eloquent speech. You have no time for such formalities. When you have something to say, you simply find a high point, a step, a word, or even the edge of your jaw, and you start talking, whether anyone has asked you to or not. Your speeches are not polished. They are blunt, witty, and often insulting. You are crashing the city's conversation, or consider personal space. The Greeks had a strong sense of decorum and physical boundaries. You see this as another artificial prison. You might walk up to a man you have never met and embrace him, just to see the look of horror and confusion on his face. This is not about affection. It is about breaking down the invisible walls people build around themselves. One of your most notorious and frequently cited acts of shamelessness involves satisfying your physical needs in public. The ancient biographer Diogenes Laertius, who loved a good shocking story, reports that you would often perform the works of Demeter and Aphrodite in the marketplace. This is a polite way of saying you would eat, urinate, defecate, and even masturbate in full view of everyone, when people would inevitably scold you, horrified, saying, Diogenes, these things should be done in private. Your response was a masterpiece of deadpan cynical logic. You would simply ask, if there is nothing wrong with eating, why is it wrong to eat in the marketplace? Or you might say, I only wish it were as easy to banish hunger by rubbing my belly. You are using your own body as a philosophical text. You are arguing that these natural, biological functions are not inherently shameful. The shame is something that society has invented and imposed upon them. By performing them in the most public of spaces, you are attempting to reclaim their natural innocence. You are forcing people to ask themselves, why, exactly, is this so shocking? What is the logical reason for this taboo? And they often find that there is not one. Beyond that's just not how it is done. This practice of an idea is, for you, a form of public therapy. You are not just trying to shock others. You are trying to deprogram yourself. You are methodically identifying every single thing that causes you to feel shame and then doing that thing, over and over, until the feeling disappears. It is a radical, and frankly terrifying, form of exposure therapy. The historical debate here is always, about the literal truth of these stories. Did you really perform all of these acts in the agora? It is hard to imagine that Athenian society, for all its love of philosophical eccentrics, would have tolerated such behavior indefinitely without some form of official sanction. It is possible that these stories, especially the most extreme ones, are didactic anecdotes, tales that, whether true or not, perfectly illustrate the core of your teaching. They might be exaggerations of a general tendency to flout convention. A quirky detail that puts your shamelessness in context is your view on pleasure. Unlike some ascetics who reject pleasure entirely, you did not. You believe that pleasure was a natural and good thing, as long as it was a pleasure that was simple, free, and easily obtained, like the pleasure of a good meal when you are hungry or the warmth of the sun on a cold day. Your public acts were, in a way, a celebration of these simple, natural pleasures, freed from the artificial constraints of shame and privacy. You were a hedonist of the gutter, finding joy in the very things that polite society had deemed disgusting. Your shamelessness was not just a protest. It was a path to a strange and radical kind of happiness. Your life is a constant performance, but it is also a grueling training regimen. You are not just trying to teach others. You are relentlessly working on yourself, hardening your mind and body against the pains and disappointments of the world. One of the most common pains, especially for a man who lives by begging, is the sting of rejection. So you decide to train for it. You need a sparring partner, someone who can reject you over and over again without ever getting tired. And you find the perfect candidate in the agora, a statue. You walk up to a large, bronze statue of a famous general or athlete. It stands on a stone pedestal, its face a mask of cold, metallic indifference to any other Athenian. This is a work of art, a monument to civic pride. To you, it is a piece of training equipment. You approach the statue, hold out your leather pouch, and, in a clear and earnest voice, you ask it for money. A few obols for a poor philosopher. Good sir, you might say, your tone perfectly polite. The statue, of course, does not respond. It just stands there, silent and unmoving. It offers you nothing. It is the perfect, absolute embodiment of rejection. You are not deterred. You ask again, and again. You spend a good part of your morning carrying on a one-sided conversation with a lump of bronze, begging it for alms. A crowd, as usual, gathers to watch this bizarre spectacle. They see a madman talking to a statue, but you see a philosopher at work. Finally, someone cannot take the absurdity any longer. A fellow citizen approaches you. Diogenes, what on earth are you doing? You know that statue cannot hear you. It cannot give you anything. Why are you wasting your time? You turn to the man, the calm, knowing look in your eyes, and you deliver the lesson for the day. I am practicing. You say simply, I am practicing how to be rejected. This single, strange act reveals the incredible psychological depth of your philosophical practice. You understand that the pain of asking for something and being told no is a major source of human anxiety. It is a fear that keeps people from pursuing their goals, from speaking their minds, from living freely. So you have devised a method to become immune to it, by repeatedly begging from an object that you know will never give you anything. You are inoculating yourself against the feeling of failure. You are separating the act of asking from the outcome of receiving. You are learning to be okay with rejection, to see it not as a personal failure, but as a neutral, expected outcome. When you later go to beg from a real, live human, and they refuse you, it would have no power over you. You have already been rejected by a far more implacable foe. You have, in essence, developed a superpower, the power to not care if people say no. This practice is a core part of your asks is your spiritual and mental training. The Greeks were very familiar with the idea of training the body for athletic competition. You are one of the first philosophers to apply that same rigorous, systematic approach to training the mind and the emotions. The historicity of this anecdote is strong. It is one of the most widely reported stories about you, and it feels psychologically true to the core of your philosophy. It is a perfect example of your knack for turning everyday situations into profound, practical lessons. A quirky detail that modern psychologists might appreciate is that you have, in essence, invented a form of cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT. You are identifying an irrational fear, the fear of rejection, creating a controlled exposure exercise, begging from a statue, and through repetition, desensitizing yourself to the negative emotional response. It is a remarkably sophisticated psychological technique, discovered not in a modern clinic, but by a scruffy philosopher in the ancient Athenian marketplace. You have turned the entire world into your personal gymnasium. Every interaction, every object, every rejection is a chance to get stronger, tougher, and freer. The bronze statue, meant to glorify a long-dead hero, has been repurposed by you into a tool for building a living, breathing one. Your life is a continuous process of reduction, of stripping away the unnecessary. You have already shed your home, your reputation, and almost all of your possessions. You are down to the bare essentials, your cloak, your staff, and your leather pouch, but you still have one small, lingering attachment to the world of man-made objects. You own a cup. It is not a fancy silver goblet. It is a simple, functional wooden cup, perhaps one you carved yourself. You carry it in your pouch, and you use it to drink water from the public fountains in Niagara. It is a practical tool, a small concession to convenience in your otherwise radically inconvenient life. It seems like a perfectly reasonable, minimalist possession, but for you, even this one small object will come to seem like an extravagant luxury. One hot afternoon, you are feeling thirsty. You head to a public fountain, a simple stone basin where a steady stream of cool water flows. As you approach, you see a young boy, a poor child from the streets, who is also there to get a drink. You stop and watch him. The boy has no cup. He does not need one. He simply cups his hands together, forming a natural, living vessel. He holds his hands under the stream of water, fills them up, and drinks directly from them. He does this 2 or 3 times, quenching his thirst with perfect efficiency and simplicity. Then, he wipes his hands on his tunic and runs off to play. You stand there, frozen. A wave of shame and admiration washes over you. This child, this uneducated street urchin, has just taught you a profound philosophical lesson. He has shown you that you, Diogenes, the great philosopher of minimalism, are still clinging to a completely unnecessary piece of technology. Nature has already provided you with a perfectly good cup. Your own 2 hands, your wooden cup, which you had considered a basic necessity, is now revealed to be a superfluous, decadent object. It is a crutch, a barrier between you and a more direct, more natural way of living. You look at the wooden cup in your hand. You look at the boy running off into the distance, and in that moment, you know what you have to do. A child has beaten me in simplicity of living, you mutter to yourself, and with that, you lift your arm and you throw the cup away. You watch as it clatters onto the stone pavement. It is your last and final worldly possession, and you have discarded it. You have been out philosophized by a child. From that day forward, you to drink from your hands when you need to eat your lentils. You are said to have used a hollowed-out piece of bread as a makeshift edible bowl. You have taken another, final step in your quest to live a life that is completely in accordance with nature, free from all artificial dependencies. This story is one of the most famous anecdotes about you, a perfect parable of your philosophy of radical reductionism. It highlights your humility and your willingness to learn from anyone, even a poor child. It shows that your philosophy was not a fixed, dogmatic system, but a constant, ongoing practice of questioning and simplifying. You were always looking for a way to need less. The historical debate around this story is less about whether it happened and more about what it symbolizes. Is it a true story, or is it a short, pithy moral anecdote created by your followers to illustrate a key teaching? The truth is, it does not really matter. The story's power lies in its message. True wisdom can be found in the simplest acts, and our greatest teachers are sometimes the ones we least expect. A quirky detail that puts this act in perspective is your relationship with objects in general. You did not hate objects. You hated the human attachment to them. You saw people as slaves to their possessions, their lives consumed by the need to acquire, maintain, and protect them by throwing away your cup. You are not just getting rid of a piece of wood. You are throwing away the last vestiges of that attachment. You are severing your final tie to the world of things. You have achieved a new level of freedom. You are now a man who needs nothing that cannot be found in nature or begged from a stranger. You have become as self-sufficient as a human being can possibly be. You are free not just from the laws of the city, but from the laws of the marketplace. You are a walking, breathing embodiment of your own radical. And now, God bless philosophy. Years have passed. Your reputation as Diogenes the dog has spread far beyond the walls of Athens. You are no longer just a local eccentric. You are a living legend. Stories of your bizarre behavior, your sharp wit, and your radical philosophy are told in cities all across the Greek world. You have become, against all odds and against your own principles, a celebrity. Then one day, your fame attracts the attention of the most powerful man in the known world. The year is around 336 BC. A new force has risen in the north. Philippi of Macedon has conquered and unified the Greek city-states, and his son, a brilliant, ambitious, and philosophy-loving young man named Alexander, is about to inherit his empire. Alexander is in the city of Corinth, a major Greek hub, consolidating his power and receiving the homage of the various Greek leaders and thinkers. Philosophers, politicians, and artists from all over Greece flock to Corinth to meet the new superstar, to offer their congratulations, and to curry his favor. It is a massive gathering of the great and the good, all eager for a moment of the young conqueror's time. Everyone goes to see Alexander. Everyone, that is, except you. You are also in Corinth at this time, having perhaps traveled there from Athens, but you have no interest in meeting some powerful young king. You are busy with your usual routine, lounging in the sun, annoying the locals, and living in your jar, or a Corinthian equivalent. Alexander, who was tutored by the great Aristotle and has a genuine, deep interest in philosophy, hears that the famous Diogenes is in town. He is intrigued. He is used to people fawning over him. But here is one of the most famous men in Greece who cannot even be bothered to walk across town to say hello. This, to Alexander, is a challenge. So, the young king decides to reverse the usual protocol. If the philosopher will not come to the king, then the king will go to the philosopher. Imagine the scene. Alexander the Great, the future master of an empire that will stretch from Greece to India, sets out with his royal entourage, his generals, his bodyguards, his courtiers, all dressed in their finest armor and robes. It is a procession of immense power and splendor, and their destination is a dirty back alley where a scruffy old man is sunbathing next to a piece of pottery. You are lying on the ground, enjoying the warmth of the morning sun on your old bones. You are probably half asleep, completely at peace. Suddenly, you hear a commotion. A crowd is gathering. You open one eye and see a group of important-looking men approaching. They are casting a large shadow over your sunbathing spot. At the head of the group is a young man with an unmistakable aura of command. It is Alexander. He walks right up to you, his men trailing out behind him, their polished armor gleaming in the sun. The crowd falls silent, eager to see what will happen. This is a confrontation of epic proportions. The man who has conquered the material world meeting the man who has rejected it entirely. Alexander, genuinely curious and perhaps a little amused, stands over you. He looks down at your ragged cloak, your weather-beaten face, and your pathetic ceramic home. He is the master of all he surveys, and you have nothing. He decides to offer you a gift, a gesture of royal magnanimity. Diogenes, he says, his voice projecting across the silent square. I am Alexander the Great. You just grunt, unimpressed. Alexander continues. I have heard a great deal about you. Ask of me any boon you like. Anything you desire, I will grant it. This is an incredible offer. It is a blank check from the most powerful man on earth. You could ask for a beautiful house, a lifetime supply of food, a position as his royal advisor. Anything. The crowd holds its breath. What will the beggar philosopher ask for? You slowly why? Sit up. You blink up at the young king, a man who could have you executed with a single word. You look at him. Then you look at the large shadow he and his entourage are casting over you. You consider his magnificent offer for a moment. And then you give him your answer. The air in the Corinthian square is thick with anticipation. Alexander the Great, the young conqueror, the master of the world, has just offered you. Diogenes the dog. Anything you could possibly desire. It is the ultimate test of your philosophy. Will you break? Will you finally admit that there is something in this material world that you want? You squint up at the magnificent figure of Alexander, his youthful face full of confidence and power. You see his generals and his bodyguards standing behind him, their hands on their swords. You see the silent, watching crowd. They are all witnesses to this extraordinary moment. You do not ask for gold. You do not ask for a pardon to return to your homeland of Sinope. You do not ask for a comfortable villa to retire in. You do not even ask for a new cloak. Instead, you raise a hand, not to gesture towards any riches, but simply to shield your eyes from the sun as you look up at him. You clear your throat, and in a gravelly voice that is perfectly audible in the silence, you make your request. Yes, you say, there is something you can do for me. Alexander leans in, a small, triumphant smile perhaps playing on his lips. He has found your price. Stand out of my light, you say. Silence. Then, a collective intake of breath from the crowd. Alexander's generals and courtiers are stunned into disbelief. Some of them start to laugh, thinking it is a joke. Others look furious. This rag beggar has just dismissed the great king. He has treated Alexander not as a benefactor, but as a common nuisance, an inconvenient object that is blocking his sunlight. It is the most profound, most epic snub in the history of the ancient world. The generals, insulted on their king's behalf, begin to mutter. They suggest that this insolent dog should be punished, perhaps flogged or worse, but Alexander holds up a hand, silencing them. He does not look angry. He looks thoughtful. He continues to stare down at you. The old man who has nothing and wants nothing, not even from him. And in that moment, Alexander, the student of Aristotle, understands. He sees that you are the only person in all of Greece who is not afraid of him. You are freer than he is. He, Alexander, is a slave to his ambitions, his empire, his endless desire for more. You are a king of your own inner world, a world so complete that it has no room for the treasures he can offer. Alexander turns to his stunned and grumbling generals, and he delivers a line that will cement both his and your legend for all time. Truly, he says, with a tone of genuine admiration, if I were not Alexander, I would wish to be Diogenes. With that, he and his entourage turn and walk away, leaving you to your sunshine. This encounter is the most famous story from your life, the absolute pinnacle of your philosophical theater. It is an anecdote so perfect that it has been told and retold by countless writers, from Plutarch and Cicero to the present day. It is the ultimate showdown between worldly power and spiritual freedom. The historicity of the event is, of course, highly debated. Did it really happen? And if it did it happen exactly this way? The neat, witty dialogue feels almost too good to be true. It is likely that the story was polished and embellished over the years to make the philosophical point as sharp as possible. Some scholars suggest that the two men may have met, but that the famous exchange is a later invention. But, as with all the great Diogenes stories, its literal truth is less important than its philosophical truth. The story captures the very essence of your teaching, that true wealth is not in what you have, but in what you do not need. The sun, a simple, natural pleasure available to all, is a greater treasure than any empire. By asking the most powerful man in the world to do nothing more than move out of the way, you are making a profound statement about the nature of power, desire, and happiness. You have proven that the man who wants nothing is invincible. Your famous encounter with Alexander highlights your complete rejection of worldly power and status. But your philosophy goes even deeper than that. You do not just reject the authority of kings. You reject the very idea of belonging to any one place or group. You are a man who has erased his own passport. One day, you are in the midst of a typical marketplace debate. An Athenian, perhaps trying to put you in your place, or simply trying to understand your origins, asks you a standard Greek question. Porturiais, from what city are you? For a Greek, this was not a casual question. It was a question about identity. Your polis, your city-state, was the core of who you were. It defined your loyalties, your rights, your culture, and your gods. To be an Athenian was to be fundamentally different from a Spartan or a Corinthian, and to be a man without a city, and a polis like you, was to be a non-person, an object of pity and suspicion. The questioner expects you to answer Sinope, your city of birth, even though you have been exiled. It is still, technically, your origin, but you have no interest in giving a conventional answer. You see this question about local, geographical identity as another trap, another artificial boundary that separates man from man. You look the questioner in the eye, and you give him an answer that is so radical, so ahead of its time, that it leaves him completely baffled. You reply, the word is a new one you may have coined yourself. It is a compound of two Greek words, cosmos, meaning the world or the universe, and polites, meaning citizen. I am a citizen of the world. With this single, revolutionary word, you have just invented the concept of cosmopolitanism. You are rejecting the narrow, tribal loyalties of the Greek city-state system. You are refusing to be defined by the accidental circumstances of your birth. Your citizenship, you declare, is not with Athens or Sinope or any other patch of dirt. Your citizenship is with the entire cosmos, with all of humanity, with the universal laws of nature. This is an idea of breathtaking scope. In an era defined by fierce local patriotism and constant warfare between neighboring cities, you are declaring a universal identity. You are arguing that what unites us as human beings is far more important than what divides us. Our shared capacity for reason and virtue, you suggest, makes us all members of a single, global community. This declaration is the logical endpoint of your philosophy. Having rejected all personal possessions and social conventions, you now reject the final and most powerful convention of all, the idea of a nation-state. Your life as a homeless wanderer becomes a political statement. You are not without a home. The entire world is your home. You are not without a city. The entire universe is your city. The historical significance of this moment is immense. While the idea of a universal order had been explored by earlier philosophers, you are the first person on record to so clearly and personally articulate the identity of a citizen of the world. This idea would be picked up and developed by later philosophical schools, most notably the Stoics, who would build an entire ethical system around the concept of our shared membership in a cosmic city. The idea would then filter down through Roman law and Christian theology, eventually becoming a cornerstone of modern Enlightenment thought in the concept of universal human rights. The academic debate here is not about whether you said it. The sources are quite clear on this, but on what you precisely meant by it. Were you making a positive political statement, advocating for a new world order without borders? Or was it a more negative statement, a simple rejection of all local affiliations? Given your generally critical stance, it was likely more of the latter. You were not trying to build a new utopia. You were simply diagnosing the sickness of the current system. Your cosmopolitanism was a declaration of independence, not a political program, but the power of the idea transcended your original intent. By coining this simple, elegant term, you planted a seed that would grow for millennia. The scruffy, homeless beggar in his jar, the man who owned nothing, had just given the world a concept of boundless and liberating richness. You are not a man from Sinope or a resident of Athens. You are Diogenes the cosmopolitan. Your life is a series of unpredictable events, a journey guided by the whims of chance and your own indomitable will. You have faced down philosophers and kings. But now, you are about to face a more practical, and far more dangerous, kind of adversary. Pirates. The story goes that you decide to take a sea voyage. Perhaps you are traveling from Athens to the island of Aegean, or maybe you are simply trying to get away from Athens for a while. You board a ship, a small, simple vessel, paying your fare like any other passenger. The journey begins peacefully enough. The ship sails out into the blue Aegean, the Greek coastline receding behind you. But this is the ancient Mediterranean, and the seas are not always safe. Piracy is a constant threat, a brutal and profitable enterprise, and your ship has been spotted. Suddenly, a vast, dark vessel appears on the horizon, bearing down on you. It is a pirate ship. Panic erupts on your boat. The other passengers cry out in fear, hiding their valuables, praying to the gods. They know what this means. They will be robbed, and then either killed or, if they are lucky, sold into slavery. You, however, remain perfectly calm. You sit on the deck, watching the pirate ship approach with an air of detached curiosity. You have no valuables to hide. Your life is not something you cling to with fear, and the prospect of being sold as a slave. You see it as just another interesting philosophical experiment. The pirates swarm aboard your ship, brandishing swords and yelling threats. They are a rough, brutal crew. They quickly round up the terrified passengers, stripping them of their money and jewelry. They come to you, see your ragged cloak and your complete lack of possessions, and sneer. You are worthless as a target for robbery. But a healthy man, even an old and scruffy one, has value on the slave market. They bind you along with the other captives. No, you are a prisoner on a pirate ship, heading for a slave auction in Crete. But you do not behave like a prisoner. You do not cower or plead. Instead, you start to act as if you are in charge. You observe the pirates. You critique their poor posture. You comment on their uncouth manners. You treat them not as your captors, but as your unruly, incompetent employees. The pirates are completely bewildered by this. They have never encountered a captive like you. They threaten you, but you just laugh. What can they do to a man who fears nothing? According to one famous anecdote, you notice the pirate captain is looking morose and depressed. You go up to him and ask him why he is so sad. Because I am a pirate, he might have grumbled. A man who lives by violence and theft. You look at him with a critical eye. Well, you say, you do not have to be. You could be a philosopher. You then proceed to give the pirate captain a lecture on the virtues of a simple, honest life. The historicity of this sea voyage and capture is, of course, open to question. It is such a perfect demonstration of your unshakable character that it could be a later invention. However, piracy was a very real danger, and the selling of captives into slavery was incredibly common. The story is, at the very least, highly plausible. There is a fascinating detail in the way you interact with your captors. You are practicing what the Stoics would later call the dichotomy of control. You recognize that you cannot control the external event. You have been captured, that you can control your internal response to it. The pirates can chain your body, but they cannot chain your mind or your will. By remaining fearless and continuing to act as a philosopher, you are demonstrating your absolute inner freedom, even in a state of total physical captivity. The debate among scholars here focuses on the psychological aspect. Was your behavior a sign of incredible courage and philosophical consistency? Or was it a form of capture bonding? A bizarre version of Stockholm Syndrome where you attempt to dominate your captors mentally as a survival mechanism? Given your lifelong habit of confronting and critiquing everyone you meet, from Plato to Alexander, your behavior on the pirate ship seems perfectly in character. You are simply doing what you always do, pointing out the foolishness of the people around you, regardless of the circumstances. The pirates, meanwhile, do not know what to make of you. You are the most useless and the most infuriating piece of cargo they have ever taken. They are probably relieved when they finally reach the shores of Crete, eager to get rid of the strange, philosophical madmen at the upcoming slave auction. They have no idea that your greatest performance is yet to come. You arrive in Crete, a prisoner in chains, and are marched to the city's slave market. This is one of the grim realities of the ancient world, a place where human beings are bought and sold like livestock. The air is filled with the sounds of the auctioneer's cry, the clanking of chains, and the quiet sobbing of the captives. It is a scene of profound human misery and degradation. You are put up on the auction block, a stone platform where you are displayed to potential buyers. The other captives around you are terrified. They try to make themselves look useful, pleading with the crowd, advertising their skills as farmers, cooks, or weavers. They are trying to survive. You, on the other hand, are in your element. You see this not as a tragedy, but as a magnificent philosophical stage. You stand on the block, not with the slumped posture of a defeated slave, but with the proud bearing of a king. You look out at the crowd of buyers with an air of disdainful amusement. The auctioneer, a man used to dealing with frightened and docile human merchandise, approaches you. What can you do? He asks, the standard question to determine a slave's value. He expects you to say, I can garden or I can write, something to entice a buyer. You look him straight in the eye and give an answer that stops him in his tracks. I can govern men, you say, your voice clear and full of authority. The auctioneer is baffled. This is not a marketable skill for a slave. He does not know what to do. So you decide to take over the auction yourself. You turn to the auctioneer and say, announce that a master is for sale, to any man who wishes to buy one. Then, you scan the crowd. Your eyes land on a wheeled wrist. Respectable-looking man. He has an air of quiet intelligence about him. This is a man from Corinth named Diogenes. You point your chained hand directly at him. Sell me to that man. You command the auctioneer. He looks like he needs a master. The entire market falls silent. The crowd, the other slaves, the auctioneer, everyone is staring at you. The slave who is trying to sell himself, and who is interviewing his potential buyers. Your shamelessness, your utter inversion of the social order, is so audacious that no one knows how to react. Diogenes, the Corinthian gentleman, is intrigued. He has likely heard of the famous philosopher Diogenes. He walks forward and engages you in conversation. He asks you about your philosophy, about your ideas on education and virtue. He is not just buying a labor. He is considering acquiring a mind. This scene is a perfect encapsulation of your cynical worldview. You are arguing that the conventional categories of master and slave are meaningless social constructs. True mastery, you believe, comes from virtue and knowledge. True slavery comes from being a slave to your own desires, greed, and ignorance. You, the man in chains, are a true master because you are in complete control of your own soul. The wealthy buyers in the crowd, you imply, are the real slaves, trapped by their positions and their social status. The historical basis for this story is surprisingly strong, reported by multiple ancient sources. It is one of the core legends of your life. The core of the academic debate is not whether it happened, but how to interpret the character of Diogenes. Was he a real person? And if so, what was his motivation? Was he a genuine admirer of your philosophy? Or was he an eccentric nobleman who saw a unique opportunity for a kind of performance art in his own home? A quirky detail that highlights your audaciousness is the price. When Diogenes asks you how much you cost, you are said to have replied, it does not matter. When you buy a fish, you do not haggle over the price if it is a good one. You are marketing yourself as a premium product, a philosopher of such high quality that the price is irrelevant. In the end, Diogenes was convinced. He sees the value in this strange, defiant man. He buys you. The deal is done. You, Diogenes the dog, have successfully managed your own sale into slavery, on your own terms. You walk away from the auction block, not as a defeated captive, but as a master who has just chosen his new student. Your next chapter, as a slave and a tutor in the house of a Corinthian gentleman, is about to begin. You follow them from the bustling slave market in Crete across the sea to the wealthy, cosmopolitan city of Corinth. Your new master, Diogenes, leads you not to the slave quarters of his estate, but into the main house. It is clear from the outset that this is not going to be a typical master-slave relationship. Diogenes did not buy a laborer. He bought a philosopher, a living, breathing paradox, and he seems to know exactly what he is doing. When they arrive, Diogenes introduces you to his two young sons. He then turns to you, the old, ragged cynic he just purchased, and says, "From this day forward, you are in charge of my children's education. You will be their master." And so begins one of the strangest and most wonderful chapters in your life. The man who rejected all responsibility is now given the ultimate responsibility to shape the minds of the next generation. The man who lived in a jar is now living in a mansion. But you do not change your ways. You bring the jar with you. Metaphorically speaking, you take charge of the boy's education. And it is nothing like the curriculum at Plato's academy. There are no long lectures on the theory of forms or complex lessons in geometry. Your school is a boot camp for the soul. First, you strip away all their luxuries. The boys are made to wear simple, rough clothing, no different from your own single cloak. They are taught to go barefoot, to feel the earth beneath their feet. Their diet is changed to simple fare, barley bread, lentils, olives, and water. No more rich sauces or expensive sweets. You are weaning them off the comforts that, in your view, make men soft and weak. Their physical education is rigorous. You teach them to ride, to shoot with a bow, to hunt. You take them on long, strenuous hikes. You are making their bodies as tough and self-reliant as you want their minds to be. Their academic lessons are just as demanding. You make them memorize long passages from the great poets, like Homer, not for the beauty of the verse, but for the moral lessons within. You teach them history and logic, but always with a practical, cynical bent. The goal is not to make them clever debaters, but to make them immune to clever, deceptive arguments. You do not just run the classroom. You start running the entire household. You observe the way the servants work, the way the meals are prepared, the way Diogenes himself manages his affairs, and you offer constant, blunt, and unsolicited advice. You become the true master of the house, not through force, but through the sheer, undeniable power of your intellect and your absolute lack of shame. Diogenes, to his credit, seems to love it. He has, in essence, hired the world's most terrifying Mary Poppins, a tutor who has come to fix not just the children, but the entire family. A quirky anecdote from this period tells of how you would force the boys to do everything for themselves, even preparing their own simple meals. The point was to teach them eutyarchia, or self-sufficiency, one of the supreme Cynic virtues. A man who can feed himself, clothe himself, and shelter himself needs nothing from anyone. He is truly free. The true nature of the relationship between you and Diogenes is a puzzle historians love to chew on. Was Diogenes a willing disciple of cynicism, who understood your philosophy and genuinely wanted his sons to be raised as virtuous, self-sufficient men, or was he simply the ancient world's first reality TV producer? An eccentric nobleman who knew a good show when he saw one and enjoyed the spectacle of having this famous, outrageous philosopher living in his house. The truth is likely somewhere in between. Whatever the motivation, the result is the same. You, in your old age, have found the perfect arrangement. You have a roof over your head, though you probably still slept on the floor, a steady supply of food, though it was simple, and, most importantly, a captive audience for your philosophy. You have been given a laboratory in which to test your ideas about education, and you are applying your shocking methods with your usual uncompromising rigor. The slave has become the teacher, and the master has become the student, a perfect, living illustration of the Cynic belief that true mastery lies in virtue, not in wealth or status. The years in Corinth pass. You are now a very old man. The boys you were hired to tutor have grown into young men, shaped by your radical, rugged philosophy. You have, by some accounts, been freed by Diogenes, though the distinction between slave and free man was always meaningless to you. You are still Diogenes the dog, a fixture in the city of Corinth, as famous and as infuriating as you ever were in Athens. But your body is failing you. The life of a cynic is a hard one, a constant war against comfort, and such a life takes its toll. Your joints ache from a lifetime of sleeping on hard ground. Your single, ragged cloak offers little protection against the damp chill of winter. Your teeth are worn from a diet of coarse bread and uncooked vegetables. You are a living testament to the stoic virtue of endurance. But endurance has its limits. How does a man who has rejected all the comforts and conveniences of society face the indignities and pains of old age? Shamelessly. Of course, you do not hide your physical decline. You do not retire to a quiet room to suffer in private. You continue your public life, incorporating your own frailty into your philosophical performance. You are seen walking through the streets of Corinth, thou leaning heavily on your staff, not just as a philosophical prop, but out of genuine need. Your steps are slow, your breath is short, but your wit is as sharp as ever. When a young, athletic man mocks your slow pace, you might retort, "You are in a race you will surely lose. My boy, I am heading towards old age, which you may never reach. I, however, am nearing the finish line of life, the one race everyone wins." Your shamelessness in the face of physical decay is a powerful lesson. In a culture that idolized the youthful, athletic body, you are demonstrating that there is a different kind of strength, a strength of character that does not fade with age. You are showing the Corinthians that a man can be old, frail, and in pain, and still be free, virtuous, and happy. The anecdotes from your later years are tinged with a dark, gallows humor. You are often seen frequenting the Crane, a cypress grove just outside the city walls where you like to sunbathe. It is here that you had your famous encounter with Alexander. Now, in your old age, you are a permanent fixture, a grumpy old man soaking up the last rays of sunshine. There is a historical debate about your final years. Did you soften your radical stance as you grew older? Did you accept more of the comforts offered by Xeniades' household? The majority of the sources suggest you did not. You remained a committed, hardcore cynic to the very end. Your philosophy was not a youthful rebellion. It was a lifelong commitment. You were determined to die as you had lived, with nothing, needing nothing. A quirky detail that highlights your stubbornness involves your diet. You advocated for a simple, natural diet, and, in your old age, you began to experiment with an even more radical idea, eating your food completely raw. You argued that the act of cooking was an unnecessary, artificial complication. Fire itself was a crutch. This led you to try to eat raw meat. In one famous and possibly fatal experiment, raw octopus, you are a fascinating and unsettling figure in your old age. You are not a serene, white-bearded sage, dispensing gentle wisdom from a comfortable chair. You are a fierce, cantankerous, and physically decaying old man who has refused to make a single concession to comfort or convention. You are a living, breathing memento mori, a reminder to all the proud, healthy citizens of Corinth that this is where we are all heading. And you are showing them that one can face this final journey not with fear or denial, but with the same biting wit and defiant courage that you have shown the world your entire life. You have lived a life of deliberate, philosophical propagation. It is only fitting that your death should be just as controversial and subject to as many conflicting stories as your life was. There is no single, agreed-upon account of how Diogenes the dog finally left this world. Instead, there is a collection of bizarre, darkly comic, and perfectly on-brand anecdotes. You are said to have died in Corinth, around the year 323 BC, at the grand old age of nearly 90. And, in a wonderful stroke of historical symmetry, you are said to have died on the very same day as Alexander the Great, the man who stood in your light, the man who conquered the world and the man who rejected it, passing into legend together. But how did it happen? The ancient sources offer several competing narratives, each one a kind of philosophical punchline. The first, and most famous, story is the tale of the raw octopus. In your quest for ultimate natural simplicity, you had decided to abandon cooking altogether. One day, To prove your point that man could live like any other animal, you obtained a octopus. You were determined to eat it, just as a wild creature would. Your friends, or perhaps your students in the house of Diogenes, begged you not to. They warned you that it was dangerous, that your old stomach could not handle such a thing. But you were, as always, stubborn. You proceeded to eat the raw, rubbery seafood. The result, according to this story, was a catastrophic case of food poisoning or a fatal bout of colic. You died, a martyr to your own radical dietary principles. A second story offers a slightly different, though equally strange, version. In this telling, you are not a victim of your diet, but of your love for your fellow canines. You are at a meal, and you are trying to distribute a piece of octopus among a pack of stray dogs. The dogs, in their eagerness, become aggressive. They bite you, perhaps on the foot. The worm becomes infected, and you die of the subsequent fever. In this version, you die, quite literally, at the hands, or teeth, of the very creatures you emulated your whole life. A third, and perhaps the most philosophically elegant, story claims that your death was an act of pure will. You decided that your time on earth was done. You had said everything you needed to say, annoyed everyone you needed to annoy. So, you simply decided to stop breathing. You held your breath until you passed away, demonstrating your ultimate mastery over your own body and your complete indifference to life itself. It is a death by voluntary, philosophical suffocation. Which of these stories is true? It is impossible to say. They all sound like the kind of tall tales that would have been told about such a legendary figure. The academic debate here is fascinating. Some historians argue that the octopus story is the most likely, as it fits your known habits. Others prefer the holding his breath version, as it is the most philosophically consistent with your ideals of self-mastery. The dog bite story is often seen as a more poetic, symbolic invention, and then there is the most mundane, and therefore perhaps the most likely, possibility, which is rarely mentioned in the more sensational accounts. You simply died of old age, after a long and difficult life. Your frail, 90-year-old body simply gave out. A quirky detail that pervades all these stories is the sense of performance. Even in death, you are teaching a lesson. The octopus story is a lesson about the limits of living according to nature. The dog bite story is a lesson about the untamable wildness you so admired. The breath-holding story is the ultimate lesson in cynical self-control. Your death, like your life, became a text for others to interpret. What is certain is that your passing marked the end of an era. The most original, most outrageous, and most relentlessly honest voice in Greek philosophy had fallen silent. The citizens of Corinth, who had been the target of your daily insults for years, might have felt a brief sense of relief, but they would soon realize that their city had lost its conscience, its jester, and its greatest, most infuriating philosopher. The dog was dead, but his final, most shocking request was yet to be heard. Your death, however it happened, presents your friends and followers in Corinth with a dilemma. How do you properly bury a man who rejected every single custom and tradition associated with a proper burial? The Greek funeral was a sacred and highly ritualized affair. The body was to be washed, anointed with oils, and dressed in clean robes. It was to be laid out for a period of mourning, the prophecies, where friends and family could pay their respects. This was followed by the ekp hora, a procession to the gravesite, and finally, the burial itself, accompanied by offerings and libations to the gods of the underworld. A proper burial was considered essential for the soul's peaceful journey into the afterlife. Your followers, perhaps the sons of Diogenes whom you had raised, approach you on your deathbed, or consult your known wishes, to ask what you would like them to do with your body. They expect you to be indifferent, but your final request is more shocking than anything they could have imagined. You give them simple, clear instructions. When I am dead, you say, just throw my body over the city wall. They are horrified. This is the most dishonorable fate imaginable. To be left unburied, exposed to the elements, was a terrible curse, a punishment reserved for the worst criminals and traitors. It meant your soul would find no rest. But why? We ask, bewildered. What will happen to you? Nothing. You reply with a weary shrug. The wild animals will come and feast on my body. This is too much for them. But are you not afraid of being eaten by dogs and vultures? You manage one last. Perfect. Cynical comeback. Not at all. You say, just be sure to leave my staff next to me, so I can wave it at them to shoo them away. The joke is magnificent. The idea of your dead corpse, still clutching its staff, trying to fend off the dogs you so admired, is the ultimate expression of your dark, ironic wit. But your request is deadly serious. You are making one final, powerful statement against the vanity and absurdity of human customs. You are arguing that the body is just a physical shell. Once the soul, the intellect, has departed, it is nothing more than a piece of meat. To spend a fortune on elaborate funerals, to build grand tombs, to worry about the fate of your empty corpse. All of this, you are saying, is the height of foolishness. The most natural, most sensible thing to do is to return the body to the cycle of nature, to let it become food for other creatures. Your death will be your final gift to the dogs. It is the ultimate act of living, then dying, according to nature. This last request became a cornerstone of your legend. It perfectly encapsulates your philosophy, your rejection of convention, your admiration for the natural world, and your complete lack of fear in the face of death and bodily decay. Did your followers honor your request? The historical sources are divided. One tradition says that they did as you asked, and your body was left unburied outside the walls of Corinth. Another, perhaps more plausible, tradition says that your friends simply could not bring themselves to do it. They were too bound by the conventions you despised. Instead, they gave you a respectable burial near the city gate, in the crane on Cypress Grove where you had spent so many of your days. The academic debate here is less about the facts and more about the implications. Your final wish is a direct challenge to one of the most deeply held beliefs in the Greek world, a belief enshrined in their great literature. From the Iliad to Sophocles' Antigone, the play Antigone is entirely about the sacred duty to bury one's dead, even in defiance of the state. You, in your final act, are essentially saying that Antigone was a fool. Whether your body was eaten by dogs or buried by your friends, your wish itself is the point. It is your last will and testament, a final, blistering critique of human vanity. You have lived like a dog, and you have asked to be treated like a dead dog. It is the perfect, logical, and utterly shameless conclusion to your extraordinary life. Your final, shocking wish to be left unburied may or may not have been honored, but your legacy was far more permanent than any tomb. You, the man who spent his life defacing the currency, had managed to stamp your own indelible image onto the intellectual currency of the world. The citizens of Corinth, and indeed all of Greece, were left to grapple with the meaning of your strange, infuriating, and brilliant life. The immediate reaction to your death was likely a mixture of relief and a strange sense of loss. The gadfly who had buzzed around their ears for decades was finally gone. There would be no more awkward public picnics, no more plucked chickens in the academy, no more uncomfortably honest critiques of their daily lives. The city was a quieter, more polite, and undoubtedly a much duller place without you. But as time went on, a strange thing happened. The man who had been a public nuisance in life began to be revered as a public treasure in death. The stories of your life, the witty comebacks, the audacious performances, they were told and retold, not as tales of a madman, but as profound lessons from a great sage. He became a folk hero, a symbol of intellectual courage and uncompromising integrity. The Corinthians, the very people you had spent years annoying, decided to honor your memory. In the Crane Isle, the cypress grove where you had sunbathed on famously dismissed Alexander, they erected a monument. It was a pillar of fine Parian marble, the same luxurious stone used for the great temples and statues you had scorned. And on top of this pillar, they placed a sculpture. They did not carve a statue of you. Diogenes, the man, They knew you would have hated that. Another empty monument to human vanity. Instead, they chose a different symbol, one that you would have truly appreciated. They commissioned a marble statue of a dog, a scruffy, alert, and dignified stray, looking out over the city from its marble perch. This statue is the ultimate tribute. It is a perfect, silent acknowledgement that they finally understood your point. They were honoring not the man, but the philosophy. They were celebrating the canine virtues you champion. Honesty, simplicity, courage, and shamelessness. The city that you had treated with such contempt was now paying you its highest compliment, immortalizing your spirit in stone. This is the beautiful, pointless point of your entire story. You set out to prove that all the things society values, wealth, fame, reputation, power, are worthless. And in the process of proving it, you achieved the only kind of value that you yourself would recognize. A legacy of thought, a permanent challenge to the status quo. You became famous for not wanting to be famous. You earned the world's respect by showing it that you did not need its respect. The Cynic school of philosophy that you championed lived on after you, most notably through your student crates of thieves. But no one ever managed to live it with the same purity, the same theatrical flair, or the same ferocious wit as you did. You were its ultimate, inimitable practitioner. The academic debate about your overall legacy continues to this day. Were you a serious philosopher who belongs in the same category as Plato and Aristotle? Or were you more of a proto-anarchist, a performance artist, a social critic? The answer is that you were all of these things at once. You created a unique and powerful fusion of life and thought, where every action was an argument, and your own body was the text. So as we leave you to your strange, posthumous glory, we are left with the image of that marble dog, forever watching over the city. It is a monument to the power of a single, stubborn, and brilliant individual to question everything. It is a testament to the fact that sometimes, the most pointless seeming life, the one that rejects all the conventional goals, can end up being the one that makes the most enduring point of all. And so, the story of the man in the jar comes to a close. The sharp, barking wit of Diogenes fades into a gentle echo. The bustling sounds of the ancient agora dissolve, leaving only the soft hum of the night around you. You are floating in that quiet, comfortable space just before sleep takes hold. The hard edges of the day, the worries and the lists, are all softening, becoming smooth and drowned like a stone in a river. Think of that simple clay jar, lying on its side. It is not a home of hardship, but one of profound peace. It is a space empty of possessions, and therefore empty of worries. The world can do nothing to it, and the man inside is completely free. Feel that sense of release, of letting go of all the things you have to do, all the things you think you need. For this moment, you need nothing at all. You can feel the gentle, warm sunlight on your face, the same sunlight that Diogenes treasured more than any gift from a king. Let that warmth spread through you, a soft, golden light that quiets your mind and eases you down into a deep and truly shameless rest.